Welcome to today's Seidokan Saturday. So last week I talked about the concept of accuracy, aim small, miss small. Sensei Nix, Ron Sensei, call him Ron, we know each other, commented on my Facebook post of the Seidokan Saturday regarding movement to make yourself hard to hit. And there are a couple of aspects of that I wanted to address. He just got ahead of me, jumping ahead a week. The concept of hitting the target is great, but if the target's moving, and especially if it's moving erratically, that makes it much harder to hit, which makes the concept of aiming small, miss small even more important, because if it's moving and I aim at a point and it's moved not enough, I can still hit something. So that makes that concept even more important. But a couple of things to address here. Number one is self-defense movement versus fighting movement. There are corollaries and there are crossovers, but they are slightly different. Secondly, movement defensively to avoid getting hit, and movement offensively in order to make contact on the hit. So we got basically four aspects. First of all, moving and fighting. Moving and fighting incorporates a variety of different kinds of footwork. In Thai boxing, we do what's called the march. We're just kind of walk stepping, and our hands are a little higher. In tournament fighting, we're moving, trying to keep this distance of our stance while moving. And I'm going to credit tournament fighting, tournament karate fighting a little here, which I don't always do, but tournament style karate fighting does help teach us to keep this stance width and base for delivering power. It's not the most mobile method, but it is very valid to have this hopping. And then we have either stepping, lunging, or, either shuffling, I should have said, shuffling forward, lunging forward, or stepping forward, and the iterations of those. I've covered those in previous videos. Very important that the feet move. One area in fighting that karate really doesn't address is head movement. So let's just take the basic combination of the jab cross. If I'm standing here jabbing and crossing and my head doesn't move, what do you suppose my opponent's doing? He's got a bead on me. But if I'm jabbing and crossing while moving my head, or even better, while moving my feet, either forward, head movement combined, moving my feet and head, now I'm going to have better effect. From the offense side, I move while hitting. In shooting corollary, which I used, the aim small, miss small comes from shooting class. The same concept applies in defensive shooting. There's a mantra which says, if you're not moving, you should be shooting. If you're not shooting, you should be moving. And ideally, you're doing both at the same time. This applies to fighting. Now, it gets a little bit different in self-defense. In self-defense, I'm just standing here minding my own business, or I'm saying, look, I don't want any of this. I'm not going to be doing this while I'm going, please don't hit me, while I'm trying to talk the guy down. So there may be distancing foot movement, some ashi sabaki, and some tai sabaki, blading, angling, squaring up, whatever I choose in the moment. But the head movement is not really present, which again is an indicator that karate is more for self-defense than fighting, although again, as I said, there are correlations and crossovers. So making myself a hard-to-hit target, either by space, foot movement, distance, guard, hand position, all of those things in self-defense, whereas in fighting, it's going to be combined with bob, weave, head movement, as well as foot movement. So those issues also affect accuracy. Learning to hit accurately, for instance, while moving is an important concept. I need to be able to move and hit, or what we call in boxing, stick and jab, okay? So when I'm moving in a boxing, I'm moving with my jab. Moving, and still trying to hit that same target. So moving while hitting. Now I'm going to round this back to my self-defense. I was teaching a particular bunkai from Pinyan Shodan the other day, and I have a student who was kind of just stuck in place, moving his arms, and the feet and body did nothing. The guy's coming in with an overhead strike, or a swinging overhead, or a club, knife, or whatever. My first step and deflect, block, frame has to be in. Now I'm not in this position. I'm in this position. Then I come into here. Then I move my feet. Then I step and deliver power through. So there's foot movement and adjustment throughout. If we're doing Tweety, I don't just stand here with my feet in place. I move, I recenter, I move, and I keep the technique in front of my center, which I've covered before. So movement of the feet, ashi sabaki, movement of the body, tai sabaki, are included and incorporated in our kata as self-defense. For fighting, we need the additional high-low, side-to-side, up and down head movement while hitting and while deflecting. I can step front foot, deflect in, back foot, deflect out, lead hand. I can step front foot, deflect out, step back foot, deflect in, rear hand. And then we combine those movements as we combatively train in a sparring/fighting context. Then we translate those foot positions, foot movements, and body angles into our self-defense. Movement to make yourself hard to hit, movement to get to the target who's making himself hard to hit, and I may have to find my angle around. Michael Calandra Sensei just posted recently a little short reel. I forget what the name of his vlog is. I was going to check that before I started. But Calandra Sensei is very accomplished former New York subway transit authority policeman. Many arrests under his belt, lots of combative experience. But his comment recently was, there are no stances in self-defense. Stance is static. There are positions which enable me to move from one transitionary phase to a from one phase to another, transitioning from one position to another as I adjust to my opponent and place myself in the optimal position for me to affect my technique while placing my opponent in the suboptimal position. All requires footwork. Don't get static. You can shift and turn. Recently saw also a post from, I forget, might have been Bas Rutten, I think, that if I pivot on my toes to throw a roundhouse kick, I've stayed in line of the attack. If I pivot on my heels before throwing the kick, I've moved offline of the attack. So pivot points, centering, angling, all very important to not getting hit, but equally important to hitting the moving and non-stationary target. The foot movement and sabaki then also apply to Tweety, throwing, jiu-jitsu, judo, wrestling, et al. So move, keep those, as Dick Vitale, famous basketball commentator, college basketball commentator says, get those puppies organized, organize those puppies. Get your feet and your body where they need to be and adjust continually as needed in the situation. Movement, sabaki, angling, key components of self-defense as well as fighting. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks for joining. And until next week, as always, most importantly, let's keep practicing.